Hi, my name is Louise and I'd like to talk to you about the Chagossian community in West Sussex. My story starts in 2005 when I began a job as a teaching assistant at a large comprehensive school in Crawley. After a time I started to hear about the Mauritian children and how disruptive and noisy they were in lessons. I was quite familiar with Mauritius since my flatmate many years ago had come from there. Mauritius is an island off the southeast coast of Africa, just over 1,000 kilometres east of Madagascar. The people of the island are quite ethnically diverse. They are mostly dark-skinned, but it's quite common for them to have Indian, Chinese or European grandparents. However, it soon became clear to me that this particular group of students were being classed as a problem. Without any consideration for their previous education or their native language, staff seemed to perceive their liveliness as a disruption and a predictor of low grades in the future. As I became more and more involved in the life of the school, I became more aware of the role of the school choir. At the time, they were directed by Patrick Allen, a music teacher who had been seeking for a way to get students involved in extracurricular activity. Hearing how much the Mauritian culture relied on oral traditions and realising how many of the children were illiterate in their own language as well as English, Patrick decided to integrate their instruments and their music into the choir. Yet, as the school discovered more about its students, many of us realised one glaring mistake. The children we had addressed as Mauritians were actually from somewhere completely different. The Chagos Islands. After the Second World War, the USA needed a base to house their bomber aircraft. Britain happened to own a group of islands east of Mauritius called the Chagos Archipelago, which they allowed the Americans to transform into a military base. The only problem was that the islands were already populated. In an unthinkable solution, all of the islands were forcibly depopulated and the American Air Force moved in. Any domestic animals left behind by the inhabitants were gassed. In a joint agreement, which is still being argued over to this very day, nearly 2,000 Chagos Islanders were forcibly relocated to Mauritius. Yet integrating into Mauritian society proved difficult, as many of the islanders were illiterate and had only ever worked in manual labour, mostly fishing. Working against overpopulation and high unemployment, many Chagossians suffered from homelessness, racial abuse and malnutrition. They were also drawn into gangs, drugs, alcohol abuse and prostitution. The families soon began to search for a solution elsewhere. In 2002, an alternative presented itself when native Chagossians and their children were given the right to own British passports, since the UK owned the islands. Since that time, two main hubs have emerged for the Chagossians in the UK, one in Manchester and the other one in Crawley, West Sussex, due to being near Gatwick Airport. Now, with over 3,000 Chagossians living in the Crawley area, the town holds a unique position, as it has the single largest concentration of Chagossians in the world. Yet, as the government continues to ignore calls for financial aid or to relinquish its control of the islands, it is the local community that must show its support. In my time with the Chagossian children, it became clear that teachers had the power to effect real change. Patrick's choir, incorporating their musical style and their culture, gained international renown and even ended up recording an album track with Rihanna. I eventually trained online to teach English as an additional language and became in charge of EAL provision at the college. I tried my utmost to direct the children to choose French and music at GCSE in order to find an education that best suited them. However, there were struggles with senior leadership who displayed no understanding of the historical background of these children and showed little sympathy towards the treatment of EAL support. Worse was to come when the music department, complete with recording studio, was reallocated to the sixth form and fell from grace with Patrick's eventual departure. I will never forget my time with these lively and talented children. I feel they are the victims of the government's rout of the arts. It also should not be forgotten how poorly regarded modern foreign languages are at this time. Now more than ever, we have to educate ourselves before we educate others. Embrace the best in your students. You'll be amazed at what you find.